Melbourne is the capital and most populous city of the Australian state of Victoria, and the second most populous city in both Australia and Oceania. Its name generally refers to a 9,993 square kilometres, 3,858 square miles, metropolitan area known as Greater Melbourne, comprising an urban agglomeration of 31 local municipalities, although the name is also used specifically for the local municipality of City of Melbourne based around its central business area. The metropolis occupies much of the northern and eastern coastlines of Port Phillip Bay and spreads into the Mornington Peninsula, part of West Gippsland, as well as the hinterlands towards the Yarra Valley, the Dandenong and Macedon Ranges. It has a population over 5 million, 19% of the population of Australia, as per 2021 census, mostly residing to the east side of the city centre, and its inhabitants are commonly referred to as Melburnians and Quad. Melbourne is home to many of Australia's best-known landmarks, such as the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the National Gallery of Victoria and the World Heritage-listed Royal Exhibition Building. Noted for its cultural heritage, the city gave rise to Australian rules football, Australian Impressionism and Australian cinema, and has more recently been recognised as a Unescocity of literature and a global centre for street art, live music and theatre. It hosts major annual international events, such as the Australian Grand Prix and the Australian Open, and also hosted the 1956 Summer Olympics. Melbourne consistently ranked as the world's most livable city for much of the 2010s. The city also features the Shrine of Remembrance, which was built as a memorial to the men and women of Victoria who served in World War I and is now a memorial to all Australians who have served in war. Residential architecture is not defined by a single architectural style, but rather an eclectic mix of large McMansion-style houses, particularly in areas of urban sprawl, apartment buildings, condominiums, and townhouses which generally characterize the medium-density inner-city neighbourhoods. Freestanding dwellings with relatively large gardens are perhaps the most common type of housing outside inner-city Melbourne. Victorian terrace housing, townhouses and historic Italianate, Tudor Revival and Neo-Georgian mansions are all common in inner-city neighbourhoods such as Carlton, Fitzroy and further into suburban enclaves like Torrec. Often referred to as Australia's cultural capital, Melbourne is recognised globally as a centre of sport, music, theatre, comedy, art, literature, film and television. For much of the 2010s, it held the top position in the Economist Intelligence Unit's list of the world's most livable cities, partly due to its cultural attributes. The city celebrates a wide variety of annual cultural events and festivals of all types, including the Melbourne International Arts Festival, Melbourne International Comedy Festival, Melbourne Fringe Festival, and Moomba, Australia's largest free community festival. Melbourne has long been regarded as Australia's sporting capital due to the role it has played in the development of Australian sport, the range and quality of its sporting events and venues, and its high rates of spectatorship and participation. The city is also home to 27 professional sports teams competing at the national level, the most of any Australian city. Melbourne's sporting reputation was recognised in 2016 when, after being ranked as the world's top sports city 3 times biennially, the Ultimate Sports City Awards in Switzerland named it Sports City of the Decade in Occupies. Melbourne is also an important financial centre. In the 2022 Global Financial Centres Index, Melbourne was ranked as having the 32nd most competitive financial centre in the world. 2 of the Big 4 banks, the ANZ and National Australia Bank, are headquartered in Melbourne. The city has carved out a niche as Australia's leading centre for superannuation, pension, funds, with 40% of the total, and 65% of industry super funds including the $109 Australian billion federal government future fund. The city was rated 41st within the top 50 financial cities as surveyed by the MasterCard Worldwide Centres of Commerce Index, 2008, second only to Sydney, 12th, in Australia. Melbourne is Australia's second largest industrial centre. Melbourne is the second most visited city in Australia and the 73rd most visited city in the world. In 2018, 10.8 million domestic overnight tourists and 2.9 million international overnight tourists visited Melbourne. The most visited attractions are Federation Square, Queen Victoria Market, Crown Casino, South Bank, Melbourne Zoo, Melbourne Aquarium, Docklands, National Gallery of Victoria, Melbourne Museum, Melbourne Observation Deck, Arts Centre Melbourne, and the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Luna Park, a theme park modelled on New York's Coney Island and Seattle's Luna Park, is also a popular destination for visitors. In its annual survey of readers, the Condé Nast Traveller magazine found that both Melbourne and Auckland were considered the world's friendliest cities in 2014. The magazine highlighted the connection the city inhabitants have to public art and the many parks across the city. Its high livability rankings make it one of the safest world cities for travelers. Thank you for staying with us for too long. See you next time with some interesting travel story.